So we were doing this youth meeting, and some other families in the area would have youth, and we'd have those home meetings with youth and all young people. There were people in their 20s and as well as high school and everything. There was this thing called Jesus 76. It was like a Woodstock for Christians, a big camp out, big concert conference out in the wood. Yeah, great speakers. So what do you remember about that? I remember it rained. It rained for like the first 2 days, and I think they called it Message in the Mud, because it was just a bunch of hippies and young people out there camping out, and it just turned into a big mud pit. But what were your thoughts on that?
We knew that was coming up, and it was a farm in Mercer, Pennsylvania, who owned the land, give permission for this Christian camp out. And through that, tremendous groups of people, young people, came from all around. I mean, even other states.
Yeah, it was only like Mercer. That was only like 20 miles from Youngstown, Ohio. So it was just it wasn't too far from us.
Yeah.
But people came from all over the East Coast. They had one there in Pennsylvania and one in Florida. It would later become the fish nets, and the creations would spin out of it. But those were like some of the earliest meetings. Yeah. You remember some of the speakers that were there?
Pat Robinson was one of our speakers.
Mm-hmm. And his was just a radio station at the time. He really was just on the very beginning of his television station and everything.
They were doing television, just starting out.
David Wilkerson was one of the speakers. They had B.J. Thomas had gotten saved and was there singing. Keith Green was there. I mean, it was just a lot of people who had given their life to Christ, a lot of different phenomenal speakers. Older guys, seasoned in the Lord, speaking to all these young people. Some really good teaching and stuff, I remember, came out of that. And so about how many people were there?
40,000.
Incredible. That's just kind of what was happening. There was this organic move of God. People were coming out of their denominations, meeting in home groups. And they talk about the Asbury revival, but again, that was happening in Steubenville, Ohio, at Catholic school. It was spilling out into the parks and into the high schools. And you guys had actually started a coffee shop, right?
Some of the ones from New Cumberland, I didn't know a lot of people from there, but I had met some Christians. They were back of starting it. They had families, and they asked me to come. Skip and I did go to those meetings. They had once a week, they would have special speakers from the area, speakers coming up from southern West Virginia and so on.
Right, they had singers, and it was like open mic, and for the people coming off the street, it wasn't like a Starbucks coffee shop. It was free coffee and popcorn and hot dogs and stuff, but they usually try to have special music in every Saturday night. You did a lot of street witnessing, and
I had done that. That had happened not too long after we moved here. I think 71, 72. God spoke things to my heart when I would spend time in prayer. When I would just go through these towns. I never had that before. We would go down to Weirton, and we lived out beyond New Cumberland, but when we go down into the town of New Cumberland, this burden would come on me, and the Holy Spirit would say, I want you interceding for New Cumberland, the town. And he did that with me, with other places around here. Cities.
And it was a poor town, and there's a lot of drugs and stuff at that time in the 70s. And
the hippie generation.
Street people. Now, that one girl you had given there was a Jesus magazine that came out, like a newspaper, and you were doing street witnessing with those Jesus magazine.
It was still right at the beginnings, or maybe just had started with the street ministry began out in California, and I don't know the town and stuff. But I think they were the ones, and they had been doing this for a few years out there. And some of them had made up this Jesus newspaper. And I would go down mainly on Saturdays and hand out information. And there was other things that happened that was just personal, that the Holy Spirit would speak to me to go and do. There was times before this that I knew when the Spirit of God was moving, but it wasn't till we moved here, and that's when God began to talk to me about the area. When I would be home just running a sweeper, kids would be in school, Skip would be working, and he would give me words of knowledge that what he wanted to do, and he said, I want you interceding for these different cities and towns. And so that's how I got started with even being concerned about the area.
Right.
It was the Spirit of God, because I did spend time at home.